Alright, so if you follow my channel, you'll know that in the last several Enduro videos that I've put out, I've been bitching and moaning about just how much I need to install a cooling fan on my bike. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to install a Trailtech radiator fan on a 2010 KTM 300 XCW. So before we go ahead and jump into the process, let's just go ahead and check out what's inside this kit. So you get the radiator fan, obviously. Comes with a thermostat and a digital readout, and the bracket to hook it to the radiator with. You get a wiring harness, which if yours isn't a plug-and-play, you can just plug it directly into here, and then you can wire it up to the battery terminals with these. In this case, I don't need it because mine does hook directly to the wiring harness on my bike. You get screws with the thermal compound that hooks the thermostat up to the fins on the radiator. You get instructions and a sticker. So for this job, you're going to need a drain pan with 1/4-inch sockets, the driver and extension. You'll need Torx bits with a driver for those, a variety of different size zip ties. You'll need a flat-headed screwdriver, a set of wire cutters, and a funnel. So one important thing to know before you start this project is that you do have to use a smaller fuel tank in order to fit the radiator fan between the radiator and the gas tank. This is a 3.2 gallon tank that I've been running for a long time. I really like it. It gives me about 100 miles of range. But what it doesn't have is a divot here taken out that this one does that allows you to fit the radiator fan in here. The other benefits, obviously, are that it's a little bit wider and it provides protection to the radiator so that they don't get smashed if I drop the bike over. So it's a trade-off. I do want the cooling factor, especially when I'm doing like slow technical riding, and I don't usually run out of gas, especially not with this tank, so I think I can afford to go a little bit smaller, but not having that radiator protection that the wider tank offers is kind of a drawback for me. So the first thing you need to do in this project is remove the seat in the gas tank, which I've already unbolted. So once you're at this point, you'll need to remove the right side radiator in order to bolt the bracket to the radiator. So in order to do that, we need to drain the coolant out. There is a bolt here on the cooling pump that you'll need to remove, and it'll just drain all the coolant out of the system. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and pull this 10mm bolt out now. There we go. So one trick to get the coolant to come out quickly is to just take the radiator cap off, and that way you're not creating suction through the system. Now that I'm done draining the coolant, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this bolt back up because I won't need it after that point. So just going to give it a little bit of a snug. Doesn't need to be too much because it is aluminum threads. The next step is just to remove the plastic fins here on the front. And to do that, you'll just press them in and scoot them forward. There we go. And then that just pops out. Now you'll see there's two bolts here and one here. Those will both need to be coming out. They're both 8mm bolts. Now that those two screws are removed, you need to remove the hose clamps that are holding it on. And there's 3 of them. There's one here on the back, one up here on the top, and then one underneath. There's also the overflow tube here as well. And you can just use a screwdriver to kind of pry that back. And then once you get that part done, you can just slide this out, and then the bottom one should pop off this side. Alright. So now you can go ahead and mount the fan to the radiator. Alright, so now that I have the radiator off the bike, I can go ahead and mount the fan to the radiator. Basically all you're going to do is just go ahead and seat these mounting bracket edges to the fan here. And you can see that there are some holes here on the side, and that's what you're going to try and line it up with. If your radiator is at all dented, this could be a little bit difficult, but fortunately in my situation, my radiators are still pretty straight. They provide you with these self-tapping screws. They're a Torx bit T20. So just go ahead and screw them into the aluminum here, which is kind of an ugly way to do it, but that is what they recommend. Give it a little bit of a snug, not too much because you don't want to strip that out. Now that that side's done, I'm just going to flip it over. Do the same thing on this side. So now that that's done, we'll need to put the thermostat into the fins here, and this tab just slides in. Before you do that though, you'll want to use this thermal compound, and you want to squirt it into the fin, in between the fins where you intend to place this. And really what this is for is to reduce the airflow around the thermostat or the thermal reader, so that way air doesn't flow over it and mess up the temperature readings. It doesn't reduce the temperature artificially. So what I'm going to do, they give you a lot of extra length of the cable here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around in a circle and then tie this up with zip ties to just kind of secure it. But for now, I think I want it right there. Someplace kind of central in the radiator. I don't want it off to the edge. I want to make sure that it's in the warmest spot in the radiator, which I think should be right in the middle. So I'm going to take off that, and then I'm going to squeeze this in there. Alright, so squeeze that whole packet in. Now I'm going to take this and just compress it. It's going to be a pretty tight fit, so maybe just use the base of a screwdriver, being careful not to bend this copper tab here, and just kind of gently tap that in. There we go. That is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm going to take a zip tie and just connect this one here to the main power cable going to the fan, so that it doesn't have as much of an option to move around. Alright, so for good measure, I've also gone and I've used a couple of these small zip ties, and I've just run one through the fins one way across the main channel where the coolant flows through, and then I ran another one through on the opposite side so that I could come back and connect these two together. And that should keep this from moving around too much. I didn't cinch it down very tight because I didn't want it to get cut on the fins, but just tight enough so that it keeps this in place and keeps it from getting snagged on anything. So now that the fan is connected to the radiator, you're ready to go ahead and put this back in the bike. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and mount the radiator back on the bike, and it's just the same process. I'm going to go ahead and plug the radiator hoses back in, and then just use a flat screwdriver and just go ahead and tighten all those back down. So now that the hose clamps are all tightened down, you can just go ahead and put these bolts back here in the radiator mounts. So now that you have that all completely hooked up, what you're going to want to do is plug the bike in. Looks like I'm going to have to cut a zip tie in order to do that. Looks like I'm going to have to cut this zip tie as well, because they just don't give you enough slack to reach that across. So pull that out. This terminal is really dirty, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some just just regular B12 chem tool and just spray it off here. Get the dirt out. It makes a good connection. Even though this bike didn't come with a radiator fan, it came with a wiring harness, and so you can hook up the fan directly without having to use the wiring harness that they provide you. So just go ahead and plug that in. It's a pretty tight fit. Yeah, you'll just want to be kind of aware of where all your wires are, because the tank's going to come and sit down this way. So you want to mount this wire as far forward as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and zip tie this to one of the brackets that hold the fan in place so that it stays up and out of the way. Cut that off, the extra, and then replace the zip tie here that I wound up cutting just a minute ago. So you can see here what I've done is I've put a zip tie here around the plug just to kind of keep it out of the way, because the gas tank's going to come and it's going to sit on this post here, and I want to make sure that this doesn't get snagged up on it and pulled. Also, if the radiator gets moved or anything, I want to make sure this has enough play in it so that it has a little bit of give, so it doesn't rip out of the plug here or rip the wires up here or something like that. So now that I have the radiator fan on and everything's bolted down and wired up, I'm going to go ahead and put the plastic shroud back on here. So now that the plastic shroud's on, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add the coolant back into the radiator here. The funnel, the radiator cap back on, put the fuel tank back on, and there again, we just want to make sure that as we're doing this, everything is seating nicely. So you can see here how everything fits nicely with this divot that's taken out of the fuel tank. And you can look closely in there, that's the wire, and it's got a little bit of play in it, so I'm not worried about it snagging up on anything. But other than that, everything looks good. I think I'm ready to throw the seat back on and it's good to go. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you have any thoughts or questions on this project, you can leave those in the comment section below. We'll get to those as soon as we can. The description below has an affiliate link to our Amazon store where you can purchase the TrailTech fan that we use for this project. Also, like and subscribe to our channel if you like the videos that we're putting out. We really appreciate it. Thanks.